The sun had long disappeared behind the western hills, leaving a soft pink glow in the sky. Samuel Hayes, a solitary frontiersman, was finishing his evening chores. His small cabin, made of rough-hewn logs, stood on the edge of the valley. Beyond it, the hills stretched like shadows, and somewhere in that vast wilderness, the Apache lands began. Samuel had lived alone for years, knowing the dangers that came with living near such territory. He had learned caution and patience, but he also carried a quiet respect for those who lived in the land before him. Samuel wiped his hands on his worn shirt and stepped inside the cabin. A fire crackled weakly in the hearth, and the smell of dried meat and smoke filled the small room. He was used to the silence of his home, and tonight it felt heavier than usual. Outside, the wind carried a chill that promised rain. He set his knife on the wooden table and sat down, hoping for a quiet evening by the fire. Suddenly, a faint knocking sound echoed from the door. Samuel froze. It was unusual to hear anyone in these parts, especially at night. The knocks came again, softer this time, almost like a whisper against the heavy wood. His hand moved to the rifle by the door. He was cautious, but he was also not a cruel man. "Who's there?" he called, his voice firm but calm. No answer came, only another soft knock. Samuel frowned. The wind could not have made that sound. He cautiously opened the door, keeping the rifle close. A woman stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, her dark hair plastered against her face. Her clothes were torn in places, and her eyes carried a mixture of fear and determination. "Please," she said in a soft voice. "I need shelter, just for tonight. I have nowhere else to go." Samuel studied her. She looked fragile, yet there was something strong in her stance, a quiet confidence even in her trembling. "You're far from any village," he said. "And near Apache land, it's dangerous." "I know," she whispered. "I can't stay out there. Please, just a night. I'll leave at first light." Samuel hesitated. He had always been careful with strangers, especially women near Apache territory. Stories of raids and conflicts were always in the back of his mind. Yet he also felt a pull of compassion. She looked human, vulnerable, desperate. And tonight the storm outside seemed merciless. "All right," he said finally. "Come in, but you stay inside." "No wandering." The woman nodded gratefully and stepped inside. Samuel closed the door behind her and gestured to the fire. "Warm yourself. You're soaked." She moved slowly toward the hearth, letting the heat touch her chilled skin. Samuel watched quietly, taking note of small details, the way her fingers trembled slightly, the careful way she avoided splashing water on the floor, and the careful glance she gave the rifle by the door. There was more to her than she let on. "I'm Emily," she said finally, her voice still soft. "Samuel," he replied. "You can sit by the fire. I'll get you some dry clothes." He moved to a small chest and pulled out a blanket and a spare shirt, handing them to her. She took them with gratitude but didn't speak. The cabin was small, with only a few pieces of furniture, a wooden table, a couple of chairs, and a bed in the corner. Samuel had learned to live simply. He noticed that Emily studied the cabin carefully, as if memorizing every corner. She was quiet, almost too quiet. "Where are you coming from?" he asked, trying to make conversation. She hesitated, her eyes dropping to the floor. "From far away. I was traveling alone." Samuel nodded. He knew better than to press too hard. People had reasons for secrecy, especially in these lands. He poured some hot tea into a tin cup and handed it to her. She accepted it, wrapping her hands around the warmth. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the roof in a steady rhythm. Samuel sat across from her, pretending to read a worn map, but his eyes kept drifting toward Emily. There was a tension about her, a careful way she moved and spoke. She wasn't just a woman fleeing from the storm, there was more to her story. "You should rest," Samuel said after a while. "The storm will pass soon and you'll need strength for your journey." I can't rest properly," Emily replied softly. "Not yet. There are people who might be following me." Samuel's curiosity sharpened. "Following you? Who?" She shook her head quickly. "I can't say. It's complicated. I just know I can't be caught." Samuel leaned back, thinking. He had heard tales of fugitives, of people running from tribes, outlaws, and dangers that stretched across the frontier. He had never encountered one in person, and yet, here she was, a stranger in his cabin, carrying secrets she couldn't tell. The fire crackled and the wind howled outside. Samuel poured another cup of tea and handed it to her. "You'll be safe here tonight. I'll keep watch." Emily's eyes softened and she nodded. "Thank you for your kindness." Hours passed. Samuel kept the fire going, his mind alert. He noticed the way she kept glancing toward the door, listening to every sound outside. She was wary, skilled, almost as if she had spent years living on the run. He realized she was not just any woman. She was clever, careful, and brave. Eventually, Emily spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "I didn't want to burden anyone, but you didn't hesitate to help." Samuel shook his head. "No one should face a storm alone. Even if danger comes, you don't deserve to face it by yourself." For a moment, the cabin was quiet. The only sounds were the rain and the fire. Samuel thought about the choice he had made. Letting a stranger stay in his home was risky, but he had done it because it was right, and somehow it felt like the beginning of something larger, a story he didn't yet understand. Outside, the storm continued, hiding the world in sheets of rain. Inside, Samuel and Emily shared the warmth of the fire, both aware that the night was far from ordinary. Samuel didn't yet know the full truth about Emily, about why she was truly running and what dangers might come with her. But for now, they were both survivors of the storm, sharing a fragile moment of safety. And so, the night began, a night that would change both of their lives forever. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the hills wet and misty. Samuel woke early, listening to the gentle dripping of water from the roof and the soft calls of birds beginning their day. Emily was already awake, sitting quietly by the fire, her eyes fixed on the damp woods outside. She seemed restless, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. Samuel poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. He wanted to ask questions, but he knew she might not answer. She was a woman of secrets, and that was clear in the careful way she moved and spoke. "Sleep well?" he asked gently. Emily nodded but didn't speak. Her gaze kept returning to the door and the window. Samuel noticed how her eyes scanned the woods, alert and watchful. Something in her behavior told him she was not just a simple traveler or a widow. She had skills, experience, and a story she wasn't ready to share. After breakfast, Samuel stepped outside to inspect his small farm. The rain had left puddles in the fields, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. He worked quietly, repairing a fence and checking the traps he had set for rabbits. Emily followed at a distance, her movements careful, as if she were testing the ground and the air. "You know a lot about the wilderness," Samuel said casually, trying to break the silence. Emily paused, her eyes meeting his. "I had to," she said simply. "It was a matter of life or death." Samuel nodded, understanding more than she realized. "You've been living alone for a while, haven't you?" Her lips pressed together and she gave a small nod. "For some time. I've learned to survive." The morning passed quietly. Samuel worked in the fields while Emily helped tend the small vegetable patch beside the cabin. Occasionally she would pause, listening intently to distant sounds, rustling leaves, the snapping of twigs, or the faint whistle of wind through the hills. Every sound seemed to make her uneasy. By midday, Samuel noticed something unusual, small signs of someone or something passing through the woods, broken branches, footprints that were not his own, and a faint trail that seemed too deliberate to be random. He did not panic, but he grew watchful. Emily noticed them too. She knelt by the trail, studying it carefully. "Someone's been here recently," she said quietly. "They're not far behind." Samuel looked at her, surprised by her calmness. "Are you expecting trouble?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but I've learned to be ready. You should be too." The tension in the air grew. Samuel realized that the woman he had taken in was not only cautious but trained. Her every movement was precise, careful, and calculated. She had lived with danger before, and perhaps danger was still following her. As the afternoon sun began to break through the clouds, a sudden sound startled them both, a faint, distant whistle that carried over the hills. Emily's eyes widened and she moved closer to Samuel. "They're tracking me," she whispered. "I didn't want to bring this trouble to your home, but it may be too late." Samuel's heart raced. He had never faced anything like this. The Apache lands were nearby, and while he had always been cautious, he had never imagined a fugitive might come into his home. He felt a surge of protectiveness toward Emily, but also a clear understanding of the danger they now faced together. "We'll be careful," he said firmly. "Tell me what to do and I'll follow your lead." Emily nodded, relief flickering across her face. She began to explain small, careful steps to secure the cabin. They moved furniture to block windows, checked locks, and set small alarms using sticks and string near the entrances. Every move was calculated, precise, and silent. Samuel marveled at her knowledge. She knew exactly how to prepare for someone tracking her. Hours passed, and the forest outside grew quieter, almost too quiet. Emily stayed close, whispering instructions when needed and keeping her eyes on the tree line. Samuel could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. He had invited a stranger into his home, and now the safety of both their lives depended on trust and quick thinking. As night approached, a low rustling echoed from the woods. Emily stiffened, her hand moving to the small knife at her belt. Samuel gripped his rifle, muscles tense, heart pounding. Two figures emerged, moving cautiously among the trees, their eyes scanning the cabin. "They're scouts," Emily whispered. "They want to find me before they come in larger numbers." Samuel nodded. He felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had never fired his rifle at another human before, but he was not about to let harm come to this woman he had sheltered. Emily quickly formulated a plan. "We make it look like no one is here. Hide the tracks. If they see nothing, they will leave." Together, they worked silently. They covered the tracks leading to the cabin, moved small objects to make the area seem empty, and extinguished any signs of recent fire or life. Samuel followed her every instruction, amazed by her skill and knowledge of survival tactics. The scouts lingered, moving closer, but Emily's preparations worked. The two men paused, looked around, and after a tense few moments, quietly retreated into the trees. Samuel exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. "You were right," he said quietly. "You knew exactly what to do." Emily gave a faint smile, but her eyes remained wary. "I've had to survive like this for a long time. It's not easy, and the danger never truly ends." Samuel nodded, understanding more about the woman he had invited into his home. She was more than a widow or a simple traveler. She was someone who had faced life-threatening danger before, someone who had learned to move through the world with skill, caution, and courage. The night came, and the cabin felt smaller, safer, yet filled with the weight of the day's events. Samuel kept watch while Emily sat quietly, tending the small fire. Occasionally, she would glance at the door or the dark hills beyond, a reminder that danger could return at any moment. Yet, there was also a strange bond forming between them, a bond built on trust, necessity, and the shared experience of facing uncertainty together. Samuel realized that the decision to let her stay the night had changed everything. He had invited danger into his home, but he had also discovered a person of remarkable strength and courage. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows on the walls. Samuel thought about the events of the day and the woman who had entered his life like a storm. He did not yet know her full story, and she did not yet trust him completely. But for now, they were allies in a quiet battle against the unknown, bound together by circumstance and survival. And in the quiet moments of the night, as the wind whispered through the trees, Samuel understood that the coming days would test them both. They would need courage, skill, and trust. The woman he had taken in was no ordinary traveler, and he knew that the secret she carried could change their lives forever. For now, he sat by the fire, keeping watch, aware that the real danger had only just begun. Night fell quickly over the valley, bringing with it shadows that stretched long across the hills. Samuel kept the cabin quiet, listening to every sound outside. The fire burned low, throwing flickering light on the wooden walls. Emily sat near the hearth, her face pale but determined, her eyes never leaving the door. The tension in the room was thick, unspoken but powerful. "You're still afraid," Samuel said gently, breaking the silence. Emily's eyes met his, a flash of sadness crossing her face. "Afraid isn't the right word," she said softly. "Cautious. Always cautious. I can't afford to make mistakes." Samuel nodded, understanding her warning. She had lived a life of danger for a reason, and her instincts were sharp. "I won't let anything happen to you," he promised quietly. For a few moments the cabin was silent except for the crackling of the fire. Then a sound from outside made both of them tense, a branch snapping, faint but deliberate. Samuel reached for his rifle, and Emily moved quietly to the window, peering through the darkness. "They're close," she whispered. "They're checking the area." Samuel's heart thumped in his chest. He had never faced such a situation, never been part of someone's escape from their own people. Yet he was not afraid for himself. His concern was for Emily. She had trusted him enough to enter his home, and now he would trust her to guide him. Emily moved with precision, gesturing for Samuel to stay low. She whispered instructions about which windows to cover and how to make the cabin look empty. Her knowledge of the land and the tactics of trackers was astonishing. Samuel realized she had faced danger like this many times before. "They're looking for me because of my people," Emily said quietly, almost to herself. "I disobeyed their rules. I refused to follow their orders. And now I must run," Samuel frowned. "Your people? You mean the Apache?" Emily nodded. "Yes. I was part of a small group, but I disagreed with the elders. They believe in strict rules. Rules I could not follow. I wanted freedom and they wanted punishment. I left, and now they want me back or worse." Samuel felt a mixture of awe and concern. He had heard stories of Apache justice, but he had never thought of it up close. "They'll kill you if they catch you?" he asked gently. Emily's eyes lowered. "Yes, I cannot go back." "Not alive." Samuel's mind raced. He had opened his home to a stranger, and now he realized just how serious the situation was. Danger was not coming from the outside world or random travelers. It was coming from her own people, skilled trackers who knew the land intimately. Suddenly the sound of movement returned, closer this time. Emily whispered, "Hide everything. Make it look like no one is here. Then stay quiet and follow my lead." Together they moved swiftly and silently. Samuel helped rearrange the furniture, extinguish the fire, and cover signs of life. Emily's hands were steady, her movements careful and precise. She taught him how to check the area, how to listen for signs of approaching danger, and how to remain unseen. Samuel followed her instructions, impressed by her skill and calm under pressure. Minutes passed like hours. Samuel's heart thumped in his chest as he watched Emily work. She moved with grace but also with a sharp edge, like someone who had spent a lifetime escaping danger. He realized that she was not just clever, she was trained, experienced, and ready for anything. "They'll leave if they find nothing," Emily whispered, "but we must be ready in case they don't." Just then a loud crack echoed from the woods, a tree branch breaking under weight. Both Samuel and Emily froze. Two figures appeared in the darkness, moving cautiously toward the cabin. Emily grabbed her knife and Samuel raised his rifle. "They're scouts," Emily said quietly. "They're trying to see if anyone is inside. Stay calm." Samuel nodded, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. The men stopped near the edge of the clearing, looking around. Emily motioned for him to stay low, and she slipped quietly to a side window, peering out at the scouts. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, showing confidence and skill that Samuel had never seen in another person. "They'll leave if they see nothing unusual," she whispered. "But if they suspect, we must be ready." Samuel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. He realized how much he trusted her, even though he knew almost nothing about her past. He also realized how brave she was, facing danger alone for so long. The scouts lingered for a few tense moments, then slowly retreated into the trees. Samuel exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. "You were right," he said quietly. "You knew exactly what to do." Emily's eyes softened, but her caution remained. "I've learned to survive like this. It's not easy, but it keeps me alive." The night grew darker and the cabin felt both safe and fragile. Samuel kept watch while Emily tended the small fire. Occasionally she would glance toward the hills, listening to the quiet sounds of the forest. She seemed both strong and weary, a woman shaped by hardship and danger. "You've been on your own a long time," Samuel said softly, breaking the silence. Emily nodded. "Too long. I learned quickly. I had no choice, my people. They were strict, unyielding. I disagreed, and that made me a target." Samuel looked at her, understanding more about the woman he had taken in. She was more than a widow or a traveler. She was a survivor shaped by life in a dangerous land. And now she had chosen to trust him, even if only for a night. Hours passed quietly. The fire burned low, casting shadows on the walls. Emily remained alert, occasionally whispering instructions or checking the surroundings. Samuel stayed close, feeling a mix of admiration and concern. He had never met anyone like her before, someone so skilled, brave, and cautious, yet still human and vulnerable. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice soft but firm. "We survived tonight, but you must know, this is not over. They will keep looking. I cannot go back, and now I cannot stay here for long. We must be ready to move when the time comes. Samuel nodded. He realized that the decision to let her stay the night had changed everything. Danger was now a constant presence, and trust had become their most valuable asset. As the fire crackled and the wind whispered through the hills, Samuel understood that the coming days would test them both. They would need courage, skill, and quick thinking. And he realized that Emily's secrets, though not fully revealed, were a key to survival, not just hers, but his as well. For now, they waited silent and alert, knowing that the night had only just begun and the true challenges were yet to come. The sun rose pale and weak over the hills, casting long shadows across the damp valley. Samuel had not slept much during the night, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for movement. Emily sat nearby, her back straight, her eyes sharp as ever. She seemed almost at home in the tense quiet of the morning, though Samuel could see the weariness in her features. "They'll be back," Emily said quietly, breaking the silence. "The trackers never give up. Once they find someone they believe has betrayed them, they follow without pause." Samuel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had always thought of danger as something he could see coming, a bear, a storm, a raiding party. But now he realized danger could be patient, clever, and relentless. Emily's life had been lived under constant threat, and that knowledge unsettled him. "What do we do now?" he asked. Emily stood and moved to the window, looking out at the hills. "We prepare to move. Staying here too long will put both of us at risk. I know a safe path through the hills. It will take time and care, but we can make it if we leave before nightfall." Samuel felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had come to care about her well-being, and now he understood the seriousness of her situation. "I'll follow your lead," he said firmly. "Show me the way." Emily gave a faint smile. "Good, then we must start planning carefully." The morning was spent in preparation. They gathered supplies, dried meat, water, and a few essential tools. Emily taught Samuel how to move quietly through the woods, how to hide tracks, and how to notice signs of people moving nearby. Samuel followed her instructions carefully, impressed by her knowledge and experience. "You've learned a lot from living in danger," Samuel said as they crouched by the edge of the forest. "Ready to start their journey?" Emily nodded. "I had no choice. If I had made one mistake, it could have cost me my life. I've been running for months, staying ahead of those who would capture me. Now I trust you enough to let you help me." The forest was quiet, almost eerily so, as they moved between the trees. Emily led the way, her steps precise, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Samuel followed closely, doing his best to mimic her careful movements. The sun climbed higher, filtering through the branches and making patterns of light on the ground. Every sound, crack of a twig, rustle of leaves, distant bird call, made them tense. "They could be following us even now," Emily whispered. "We must stay silent, stay hidden." Samuel nodded. He was amazed at her calmness. Even though danger was near, she moved with confidence and control. He realized that surviving under such circumstances had made her both strong and wise. Hours passed, and the hills around them grew steeper and more rugged. Emily led Samuel along narrow paths and hidden trails, places where few people ever traveled. She explained that these routes were chosen carefully. Natural barriers and difficult terrain could slow down anyone pursuing them. As they rested beside a small stream, Emily finally spoke about her past in more detail. "I was part of a group, a small family within my tribe. I disagreed with the elders with the rules they enforced. They believed that anyone who disobeyed must be punished. I could not stay, and leaving made me a target." Samuel listened intently, realizing the depth of her courage. "You risked everything to follow your conscience," he said quietly. Emily's eyes were somber. "Yes, I had to. But now I must survive to have any chance at freedom. And I cannot survive alone anymore. That is why I trusted you." The afternoon passed with tense movement through the hills. They avoided open spaces and crossed rocky slopes carefully. Samuel found himself relying more and more on Emily's guidance, trusting her judgment completely. He felt a growing admiration for her bravery and skill. As dusk approached, the first signs of pursuit became clear. Broken branches, footprints in the soft soil, and a faint smoke in the distance hinted that they were not alone. Emily's movements became even more careful, her eyes sharp and alert. "They're closing in," she whispered. "We must move faster. Follow me exactly." Samuel's heart pounded as they navigated through the forest, keeping low and silent. Emily pointed out places to hide, natural cover, and ways to mislead anyone following them. Each step was tense, calculated, and deliberate. Suddenly, they heard voices, soft, urgent, and speaking a language Samuel did not understand. Emily's hand shot out, stopping him. "Hide, don't make a sound." They crouched behind a large rock, barely breathing. Two men appeared on the trail ahead, moving cautiously but with purpose. Emily remained still, her eyes fixed on them. She whispered instructions to Samuel on how to remain invisible and calm. The men passed within feet of them, unaware of their presence. When the voices faded, Emily exhaled quietly. "That was close," she said. "Too close. We must keep moving until night falls. Only then will we have a chance to rest safely." Samuel nodded, feeling the adrenaline still rushing through his veins. He realized how skilled Emily was at survival. She had spent her life navigating danger, escaping pursuit, and protecting herself, and now she had shared that knowledge with him. Night fell over the hills, and they finally found a small hidden valley where they could rest. Emily set up a small concealed camp, and Samuel followed her instructions carefully. They shared a quiet meal, eaten quickly and without waste. The fire was small, hidden, and carefully shielded from view. As they rested, Samuel reflected on the day's events. He had started the morning worried for her safety, and now he realized that their survival depended on trust, skill, and careful planning. Emily had taught him much in a short time, and he admired her courage and wisdom more with each passing hour. "You've helped me survive today," Emily said softly. "I cannot promise the days ahead will be easy, but having someone who trusts me makes it possible." Samuel shook his head. "I should be the one thanking you. You taught me how to face danger in a way I never knew existed, and I feel responsible for keeping you safe." Emily smiled faintly. "We keep each other safe. That is the only way to survive." The night grew quiet, filled with only the sounds of the forest, distant owls, rustling leaves, and the soft murmur of a stream. Samuel kept watch for the first few hours while Emily rested lightly, her eyes occasionally opening to scan the darkness. They both understood that the pursuit was not over, that danger would return, and that they had to be ready at any moment. As Samuel watched the firelight flicker against Emily's face, he realized that the woman he had welcomed into his home had changed his life. She was not just a fugitive or a stranger. She was brave, clever, and resilient, and now he was part of her journey, sharing her struggle for freedom and safety. The night stretched on, silent but tense, as they prepared for the next stage of their escape. And in the quiet of the hidden valley, Samuel understood that the coming days would test them both more than they had ever been tested before. They were bound together by necessity, trust, and the will to survive, two people facing a relentless pursuit through dangerous lands, each learning from the other, each becoming stronger with every step. This completes Part 4, 1,000 Words, showing the escalation of pursuit, Emily teaching Samuel survival skills, and the deepening bond between them as they navigate danger together. I can now write Part 5, the final part, where the escape reaches its climax. Emily's story fully unfolds and the resolution shows their survival and the bond formed. Do you want me to write Part 5 next? The first light of dawn crept over the hills, painting the valley in soft shades of gold and pink. Samuel and Emily had moved during the night, following narrow trails and hidden paths that only Emily seemed to know. Their bodies were tired, muscles aching from constant vigilance, but their minds were alert. Danger was still near, though the forest around them seemed calm in the early morning light. Emily paused on a small ridge, looking down at the valley below. "We're close to safety," she whispered, a note of hope in her voice. "If we can reach the river and follow it east, there's a place where no one can track us easily." "Just a few more miles?" Samuel nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and tension. They had faced close calls hidden from trackers and relied on each other for survival. He had learned more about courage and skill than he ever imagined possible, and he had come to care for the woman who had risked so much to escape her past. The journey down the ridge was slow and careful. Emily led the way, scanning for danger, while Samuel followed, keeping low and moving quietly. Every sound, every shadow made them pause, but with each step they drew closer to safety. Halfway down the trail, a distant shout echoed through the valley. Emily froze, her eyes wide. "They found our trail," she whispered urgently. "We must move faster and be clever. They're trying to block us." Samuel felt his pulse quicken. He had never been chased in such a way before, but he trusted Emily completely. "Lead the way," he said firmly. "I'll follow exactly as you tell me." Emily nodded, her expression focused. She led him through a narrow passage between rocks, then into a small wooded area where the undergrowth was thick. "We'll lose them here," she said. "They can't move quickly through this terrain." The trackers were not far behind. Samuel could hear faint footsteps, the snapping of twigs, and low voices calling in their language. Emily signaled him to remain silent, and they moved carefully through the dense forest, using the shadows and the uneven ground to their advantage. Hours passed with tense movement until finally they reached the river. The water glistened in the early morning sun, flowing swiftly but inviting. Emily's eyes lit up. "We're safe for now," she said softly. "They cannot follow us along this path easily. It will take time for them to catch up if they even try." Samuel let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked at Emily, noticing the weariness in her eyes and the way she tried to hide it behind calm determination. "You did it," he said quietly. "You led us through every danger and brought us here safely." Emily smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's not over, but we have a chance now. A real chance." They followed the river's edge, moving carefully but with more confidence. Samuel noticed how Emily paused occasionally, scanning the area, always aware of the possibilities of danger. She had taught him much about patience, observation, and trust in instinct. He felt grateful, not just for her guidance but for the strength she had shared with him. By late morning, they reached a hidden clearing, a small valley surrounded by high rocks and dense trees. Emily stopped, looking around. "This is it. Here we can rest safely for the day. The trackers will have to give up or turn back. It's unlikely they'll follow us this far." Samuel helped her set up a small camp, and they finally allowed themselves a brief rest. They shared a meal of dried meat and water, eating slowly and carefully, aware of the silence around them. For the first time in days, Samuel allowed himself to relax slightly, his trust in Emily stronger than ever. As they rested, Emily finally spoke more about her past. "I lost my husband in the conflicts," she said quietly. "He tried to protect me, but he didn't survive. I had no choice but to leave my people. They would have killed me for disobedience. I ran to survive, to find freedom." Samuel listened, realizing the depth of her courage. "You've endured so much," he said softly, "and yet you survived. I admire you for that." Emily's eyes softened. "I survived because I had to and because I was careful. But now, meeting you, someone who showed me kindness without question, it makes a difference. You reminded me that not everyone is a threat, that trust is possible." Samuel felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. He realized that their journey had changed him too. He had seen courage, wisdom, and resilience in a way he had never understood before, and he had come to care for Emily, the woman who had risked everything to survive. The rest of the day passed quietly. They shared stories of past experiences, laughed softly at small memories, and began to feel a sense of normalcy after days of constant fear. Samuel noticed Emily relaxing for the first time since she had arrived at his cabin. He understood that this brief safety was precious, a reward for the struggles they had endured together. As night fell, they prepared for one last watch. Samuel took the first shift, keeping his eyes on the river and the surrounding woods. Emily rested beside the fire, finally allowing herself a moment of peace. Samuel admired her strength and courage, realizing that the bond formed between them during this journey was profound. They had survived together, trusted each other, and relied on one another in a way few could understand. Before he drifted into a light sleep, Samuel thought about the journey that had begun with a single act of kindness, allowing a stranger to stay in his home during a storm. That decision had changed everything. It had brought danger, yes, but also trust, respect, and an unexpected companionship. Emily stirred slightly, opening her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered softly, "for everything. For trusting me, for keeping me safe, for being here." Samuel reached out and nodded. "We kept each other safe," he replied. "And we'll keep moving forward, together." In the quiet of the hidden valley, with the river flowing gently and the stars shining overhead, they allowed themselves to hope. Danger might return, the world was still unpredictable, but for now they had survived. They had faced fear, pursued by relentless trackers, and they had found a way to protect each other. And in that survival, in that trust, a new story had begun, one of courage, friendship, and the quiet triumph of two people who had learned to face the world together. The fugitive and the frontiersman, brought together by circumstance, had found a rare kind of safety in each other's presence, and it was a bond neither would forget. As the night deepened, the fire burned low and Samuel and Emily rested with vigilance and hope. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but for the first time in many nights, they could feel the fragile peace of survival, knowing that their journey had brought them here safely and that they were stronger together than apart. This completes Part 5, 1,000 words, and the story. It concludes the escape, reveals Emily's past, highlights the growing trust and bond between Samuel and Emily, and ends with hope and survival. If you want, I can compile all 5 parts into a single complete story, polished and ready for reading. Do you want me to do that?